Okay, so let's take this next training video and let's talk about the richest man in Babylon. So let's review what our goals are is to help you reach your needs and wants by increasing your cash flow. And our approach is educational. And remember that this material is prepared for informational, educational purpose only. It's not intended to provide any and should not be relied on for investment, tax, legal, or accounting advice. So the richest man in Babylon. There's 7 rules that he writes about in the richest man in Babylon, and what I want to do is go through these 7 rules. And these 7 rules are pretty basic. These are very familiar to you. You've heard them before. Maybe you haven't. Maybe it's not a refresh. Maybe these are new to you. So let's walk through them and take a look at rule number 1. He talks about start thy purse to fatten. Basically, what he's saying is pay yourself first. That's the great thing about a 401k plan, the idea and strategy of having money come out of your paycheck if you're an employee. You turn it on, you put a percentage of your paycheck or a flat dollar amount, you don't think about it. And so there's other strategies that we implement as well that can accomplish the same thing, whether you're an employee and or a business owner. But you get the idea, pay yourself first. The second one is control thy expenditures. Well, we need to control our expenses. This sounds kind of silly to say, but it's extremely important. Whether you're a business or an employee, your expenses are essentially your livelihood into the future. So what we do is we show ways to control our expenses, and we're not talking about cutting coupons and eating mac and cheese and hot dogs for a year or anything like that. There's some efficiency uses of our dollars, and so that's one of the areas that we focus on when we go through our planning process. Make thy gold multiply. Basically, earn a fair rate of return. Warren Buffett had talked about he's pretty comfortable with the 6 to 8% rate of return. Well, when you got billions and billions of dollars, the average person will say, well, 6% on billions and billions of dollars, of course you're happy with it. But his point is made in the sense that if you're chasing rates of return, I have a saying that the poor chase rates of return, the wealthy maintain and build. And so if we're able to maintain and look for a fair rate of return, we're not always like a horse race or a greyhound race chasing the rabbit. We're looking for something that's fair. We're not to get too greedy. We're the tortoise and the hare story. We can use a whole bunch of cliches here if we want to, but you kind of get the idea. Is that let's look for something that's consistent, that's going to be compoundable. We'll show you and create efficiencies to where that compounding rate of return can be enhanced through the efficiencies of through our planning process. Guard thy treasures from loss. Don't lose money. Again, the fair rate of return. So if we're okay with looking for and chasing a 18% rate of return, well, our risk level could be 50-60% depending on what we're trying to accomplish. But if we're looking at a fair rate of return of 6, 7, 8%, and we're in an environment where we limit our losses by 3 or 4%, there's a positive arbitrage. Now again, we're not talking investment advice here. We're just talking about educational as an example of kind of what we'll go through in this process. Make thy dwelling a profitable investment. Own real estate. And I generalize own real estate and not buy a home or have a personal residence, because if you're an employee and you live in the state of California, real estate's pretty expensive. So it may not make sense. It may not be a good return on your dollars to buy a personal residence. It may make sense to take those dollars and actually invest in real estate. And get a rate of return and create a passive income and create some tax advantages. So those are things that we'll walk through in Rule 5 as we go through our planning process. Rule 6 is ensure future income. What we're talking about here is protect your family. Protect yourself. There's the majority of the protection we're talking about insurance type products, but it's better to pay a premium and protect your livelihood than it is to go bare and self-insure everything and put everything at risk. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because remember rule number 4, don't lose money. If you're self-insuring and you are on the opposite end of the odds and you do get injured, you do get hurt, or something bad happens to you, you're going to wish you had the protection. So again, don't lose money. And part of that is protect your livelihood. And there's efficient ways of doing that, and we'll go through that in our planning process. Rule 7, increase thy ability to earn. Let's increase your ability to earn by, maybe it's not all of our money in, well, I guess a good example would be the buying a personal residence, rule number 5. Maybe we can increase our ability to earn by maybe not buying a house, but buying a real estate property, or maybe not buying a single family home, but maybe using the same dollars and buying a triplex or a fourplex. And reduce our risk by having 4 renters instead of 1 in a single family home, and that sort of stuff. So there's a whole bunch of different ways we can do this in increasing your ability to earn. Maybe it's creating a home-based business. Maybe it's looking at some kind of direct selling. If your wife loves jewelry and her friends love jewelry or makeup or cosmetics, or I don't know, you guys like health drinks or your fitness gurus or whatever the case may be, maybe home-based business is a way to do increase your ability to earn $500 to $1,000 a month. We can create some efficiencies there. Excuse me. Rule number 8, we added to this. Rule number 8 is not in this book. Rule number 8 is pay thy fair share in taxes. Reduce your tax liability. It's not a matter of what kind of money you make, what your gross income is. It's what your net income is. What are we actually taking home? It's important to reduce our tax liability, because if you think about it, for every $100 not taxed as income, if you're in a 22% tax bracket, that's a 22% savings. That's a rate of return. That's guaranteed. So if we can save $100 from being taxed, you just earn $22. That's a 22% rate of return. So maybe earning a fair rate of return of 6% on top of that, you're way ahead the game. And when we're talking about compounding, so now you kind of get an idea of when we're looking at the big picture holistically as a consultant, we take all these rules and we stack and layer and intertwine all these rules. What we're talking about with creating efficiencies and compoundings really is a big difference when you're looking at everything through this process. So I like to go through this, how this whole thing came about. And I mentioned in one of my intro videos, Robert Kiyosaki. He's the one that wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad back in the late 90s. He's done a whole bunch, but he wrote a book called Cash Flow Quadrant. And quite honestly, that book is the reason why I decided to take the leap in starting my own business in this industry. Because I felt I had a gift, I had ability to communicate what could be complicated in the financial world and make it somewhat less complicated. I don't know, only you can be the judge of that as you hire us through our membership services, either as an employee or a business owner. But let's take a look at how this comes about. So 5% of the wealth within the United States is generated from this left quadrant. So this top left quadrant is an employee. You have a job, and you're trading time for dollars. Okay, you're investing your time to get a rate of return, which is income from an employer. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. Okay, this is maybe what you're comfortable with. Maybe this is your personality and what you like. That's fine. We just need to find efficiencies within this quadrant. Okay. Now there are people who like to be in the self-employed quadrant: doctors, dentists, CPAs, attorneys, that sort of stuff, where you, instead of having a job, you own a job. You're still trading time for dollars. Again, this goes back to what I was talking about as a business owner and employee. Your personal decisions and business decisions, they intertwine and they interact with one another. 5% of the wealth is generated here. Quite honestly, as an employee, your tax rate, especially like in a high tax state like California, you add the percentage, it could be anywhere from 30 to 50% tax rate. Self-employed, it's significantly higher, but we have more tax advantages because of the way the tax code is written here. So really, self-employed there's differences. It's how you set your business up as a sole proprietor, S Corp, LLC. We can go in that another time. I didn't want to go into that right now, but So this is the left quadrant, 5% of the wealth. The other 95% of the wealth is created on the right side of the quadrant. In the top right is the business owner, where you own a system. So you're a business owner meaning that you own a business, you're making widgets, and you're running the business, and you have 200, 300, 400 people running the business for you. If you go away for 3-4 months, it may not really affect your business. That's a business owner. The key is to use that tool of a business and that system and to really turn that into the next quadrant, an investor, where you're earning passive income. You own investments, where you're looking at other businesses, you're looking at other investments, real estate, whatever the case may be as an investor, to compound and have money grow into money. So this was really intriguing to me, and to understand this and dissect this. So when I go through my planning process with you, whether you're an employee or a business owner, we go through the rules of the richest man in Babylon, and go through some of these other planning processes that you saw in the membership site as an employee member or as a business owner member, and all those things put into combined with this rules with the richest man in Babylon in this cash flow quadrant really are what creates the efficiencies and the compounding of money. So hopefully this was helpful, and go ahead and click on one of the next videos. If you don't want to engage us just yet, you still have some questions, you still are looking and intrigued by some of our thoughts and processes, click on one of the other links and continue to keep your notepad and pen next to you, jotting down some questions. So look forward to working with you. Thank you. Now, if you have continued on and you didn't exit out, I wanted to take a look at this. This is really from a business planning perspective, but this also really will affect you as an employee as well if you want to look through this. There's 3 basic planning processes. There's family planning, business planning, and legacy succession planning. If you remember on the business Terra Firma membership side of as a business member, we talk about business planning, but we also talk about legacy and succession planning. Excuse me. This is pretty important. But when it comes down to all of our planning, these are the 3 things that we're all focusing on. But there's something that gets in our way, okay? And I call it economic termites. What are economic termites? Well, to answer that question, let me ask you a question. What are termites? That's right. They're little bugs that eat away at your wood, right? So let's say it's your house. So the next question is that if they eat away at wood, when do you usually know you have a termite problem? Exactly, when the damage has already been done. The moment a termite has become recognizable, you and I have seen evidence of a termite, the damage has been done. Well, there's economic termites as well. There's certain things in our economy, in our personal and social economy, that are termites that eat away at our wealth, and when we don't know it happened until the damage has been done. So we plan for these, and there's 4 of them right now. We call them taxes, inflation, time, and laws and regulations. Okay, we always try to focus on the first type of part of our planning on taxes, because like I mentioned before, if you're an employee and you're in the 22% tax bracket, if we save $100 of income from being taxed, that's a $22 savings. That's a 22% rate of return. Earning another 6, 7, 8% on top of that is just gravy at that point. So we like to look at taxes because it's basically recouping what you've already earned. Then we prepare for inflation, we prepare for time, we prepare for regulations. These are all things that we can plan to prepare for, but we have no control over except through our planning process. So what we can do is that if you're interested and you want to see my economic termites white paper, if you will, it basically goes through taxes, inflation, time, laws, and regulations, and it's a 37 page document that just kind of goes through high level, gives you the history of taxes, inflation, and how time and laws and regulations affect us. So if you're interested in that, let us know. We'll be happy to email this to you as a PDF, and you can take a look at it. All right. So again, thank you very much for your time. And if you want more information and you're not ready to engage us just yet, click on the next link, get some more information, keep your pad of paper and your pen next to you, jot down some questions for our conversation.